So it's been quite a while since I've done a video. I'm sorry, I lost my voice, so it's gonna be kind of hard to do this. But it's going well, so I guess I should do an update from since the last time I have did a log, and I'll just break it down into two videos and then update on how my 2 weeks are going. And so since the last time I've done a video, I was working with a student, and the scenario that kind of disturbed me was to see the friction that I was having with him. He was being non-cooperative and very argumentative, and then I think once I started to see that some of the more adult students were combative to my adult stance within the classroom, that's when my teacher voice came. And I remember Miss Amy telling me, it's not time to be sweet, you gotta be spicy. And so I've been spicy ever since. Not in a negative way. Just to show that, for one, I mean business, and for two, I deserve respect. So that's really one of the main things that I try to drive home when I'm talking to the kids. That when I say something, I mean it, and it's non-negotiable. And that I do deserve the same respect that I show you. And I am gaining it. The same student that I had the issue with weeks later when I had him again was very sweet and very responsive, and I would just have to look at him and tell him what to do. Like, and he wouldn't go back and forth with me. I'm just like, nope, there's no more talk about this. You're either doing it or you're not doing art, and you can go have quiet time until you're able to come back and follow directions. And so I think that having that back and forth with the student and being able to not lose my cool, because I did have a friend that told me, and I was afraid of this when I started doing my teaching, but I've been teaching since I was young, so I didn't think that my patience was really at the level that she was, because I've been teaching under my foster parents and with my aunt since I was 14, and I've been teaching art, so I've taught art to young kids, old kids, autistic students. I've done summer camp and for church, and I've worked with preschool students while I was in Seattle. So I'm kind of accustomed to working with kids, and so my patience, and I help raise mostly all my nieces and nephews, but I'm kind of accustomed to dealing with kids, and I have a really high tolerance and a very strong demeanor, and so it was kind of nice to have that back and forth to where I could feel in control, because I did have, like I said, that my one teacher friend who wasn't able to, she was just and she was very nice like me and very soft-spoken, but she wasn't used to the kids being so combative, and she did have a situation where she was very close to pulling the child off of her feet and telling her, listen to me, and she had to step away, and she's just like, oh my God, Dominique. She called me later on after it happened and said, I lost control and I'm afraid, and now she's a great teacher, but I was afraid of that happening to me. So when I had this student, and what he was doing was that I asked him to hand me the paper, and he was snatching papers out of my hand from other students. I'm just like, are you the teacher? No. You need to hand me your paper, and you need to sit down and get ready to line up. And he wouldn't hand me the paper. I'm just like, let go. Bob. Like, go Bob. And he's like, no. And this was a first grader, and he just yank, yank, yank. And I was just like, you're going to let it go, and you're going to sit down. And so I ended up just like opening his palms, not like forcefully prying, but opening his palms just so that I could get the paper, which was, I mean, I didn't hurt him or anything, but he was being naughty, and he was bucking at me. So this was the same student that's been bucking at me on the rug, and I found out later on, and it's kind of nice to have the backstory on students. And once I was provided with them, and now I seek them out myself, because I know that, especially in art, and especially where we're in such a let's see, what's the word, holistic um, like class, that there are going to be some different factors that affect them and that they're negotiating with, that they don't usually negotiate with when they're in just their general class that goes over general curriculum, because they're not given the time. They're told to focus on this one thing and nothing else, and we tell them to focus on themselves, and so they are. And so I can't really condemn them for that, because their reality is much harder than what they're dealing with in school. And it's like, when I think about it, I watched this video through our CEPD class about Dropout Nation, and it's kind of interesting because I'm just like, oh, that was kind of like my history until I got the right teachers that got me on the right path. And it's not that I wanted to drop out because I wasn't smart and I wasn't ready, but I wanted to drop out because I was just like, how am I so sure that this is going to ensure that I have a good future? Because my mom is educated. My mom had a college degree, and I'm just like, she doesn't have a good future. And then later on, I realized she didn't apply herself. But yes, when I was watching Drop Off Nation, some of the things that struck me the most was that the students didn't want to come to school and deal with their problems or anyone else's problems, because being there, they were made to forget that their life was not normal, and they were forced to act as if it was. And so these teachers, students are not factoring in that they have to deal with things back home. And Bob had an older brother who bullied him back at home. And so when he came in, he was very aggressive. And he just wanted love, because he was so used to being bullied at home. And I speak with this about Miss Amy a lot, but I realized that we have to counteract their home environment. So if they're used to being coddled, we have to let them step out on their own. If they're used to stepping out on their own, we coddle them. And so, and not coddle to control. Never coddle to control, but coddle to motivate. Once I saw the student again, I was just like, you're going to act this way, but I'm not going to allow you. And since then, I've dealt with similar students the same way. When teachers are like, this is what the student does, this is what the student is, and I'm just like, well, in here, and art is different. We're not dealing with that. Any of that outside, anytime a student's just like, well, so-and-so, first off, we're not tattling. Second off, it's not relevant. Why could that happen then? And this is about now. And even like recently, just today, which is 3/20th, and I'm speaking about an event that happened 6 weeks prior. But even today, I gave a student Trojan Gold who was misbehaving a day ago, and he came in and he couldn't sit down on the rug, so I sat him down on the number beside me. He just span around and was playing with it and was flipping around. But when he came in today, and he was out of control and out of line when he was out in the hallway. And so students like, he doesn't need to get Trojan Go because he was acting up out there. And I was like, what's going on out there has nothing to do with in here. Because all I know is that yesterday he couldn't sit down on the rug. And he couldn't sit down on the number. And he was throwing the number this way and flipping around and wouldn't even look me in the eye. And today he is sitting down on the rug with his legs crisscross applesauce, and he's playing. And he hasn't moved. He's not playing anyway. He is sitting nicely. And he's being respectful. He's able to look me in the eye. And that shows growth. And so I'm giving him a Trojan Go because he has grown since yesterday. And so I don't like to factor in some of the things that happen outside of the class. And I realize some of the teachers do. And that kind of bothers me. And so since then, I've dealt with students differently, only allowing whatever happens in class to be like to regulate whether or not how I respond to them. I respond to them positively initially, and then I'm much harder if they need to be like pushed. And I tell them, I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for you. Because this is what I'm here for. I'm here to help you to become the better person. I'm here to make you better than I am. And so I instill in them this trust that I'm not here to make them feel bad. I'm not here to make them feel like they're not good enough. I'm here to let them know that they are good enough, but they have to believe in themselves. And they have to show initiative. And they have to make the good choices that help to keep them on this path, on this track to success. So that's how I deal with troubled students now. And so I was really happy with this situation prior to No, I wasn't. I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, how can I deal with this student? I talked to Miss Amy, but she did recognize that some of the students respond differently to me because I am a different person. I have multicolored hair. I'm African American. Although they usually still ask me what I am, because I'm not the same shade as them, and I don't have the same background, and I have tattoos and all these things, and I dress weird, but I do dress pretty because they're like, you're so pretty, Miss Hollis. And I'm just like, really? And they're just like, but your clothes are weird. I'm just like, yeah, I know. So yeah, that was that. Week after that, and this was all when we were doing Square Art 1. Because we didn't do the Steve Finley project 4 weeks prior to today, 3/20th. So the next week I got to go to the other classroom and work with visually impaired students. They were twins. Ben and Jerry is what I'll call them. And they were the sweetest boys. And Miss Meyerhofer is like, yeah, if you want to come, you can. I'm like, I haven't worked with a visually impaired student ever. So exciting. First off, can I just say, the kids really, really connected to me well. They were like, your hands are cold. But I'm just like, all the kids say that when I'm tying their shoes. It's like, oh my gosh, your hands are cold. I'm like, no. How do you think I feel? But his parapro was just like, he usually never, and it's kind of surprising with the mainstream students. They respond so well to me. I did have this one student. I was just like, please don't strangle me. And he's able to listen to me now. He's just like, hi, Miss Hollis. And I do have other students that they are able to just really connect with me. And so she's like, but he has never really trusted anyone and connected with someone like that. It's usually harder. And I had a ghost with him because we were painting for the Square Art 1, but we didn't want him painting everywhere. And we let him use his favorite colors, which are the colors of his room. And apparently his parents are art teachers. And so they painted colors that that theoretically he would be able to see. And so it's red and blue. So his room is red. And so when it's light in his room, and it was just beautiful to hear the way that he described color and how he was able to have this tactile relationship to color. And so he's like, when my room lights up, it's white, and the light is bright. And then when the light goes, it's dark, and it's dark blue. And so we painted with red and blue. And so I would tell him, do you hear the brush, Ben? And we were painting with like a kabuki style brush, and we were using acrylic, and he was just sliding it across the page, and I would just hold his hand as he was sliding it across the page, and I would say, Ben, are you able to hear how differently the brush strokes are? The brush strokes are scratchy when you're moving it across the paper and you do not have enough paint, but it moves smoother when you're able to really glide across the paper when you have more paint on it. So let's keep the paintbrush saturated. And so he was able to really understand that. He was able to understand when the brush needed paint and when it had enough. And he was really, really, really loving, like, filling the page. He's like, is it all red now? Is it all red? Is the page filling up with red? Is it filling up with red? I'm like, yes, Ben, yes, Ben. And he was just so excited. And he just sat there, tapping and holding on to things, just gliding the brush and telling me about how he loves blue and black. I mean, red and blue. But mostly blue because it's dark, and the dark comforts him. His brother was not as visually impaired, and he drew interesting shapes. And I thought that was really cool. And so that was my first instance with visually impaired students, and it was probably the best experience I had, to be able to, like, to have, not to be within close proximity to the student, but to be of comfort and to have their trust instilled in me. It was just really awesome. So yeah. Okay. Next scenario. So that was that week, and then so I'm doing 5 weeks. Let's see. So I think after the week that I worked with the visually impaired students, as we switched over to the Steve Finley project, it was interesting doing that because I do have a undulating education in our founding of America, And so I was kind of learning with the students, and so I had to deal with my inabilities as well as their inabilities, and I had to modify myself to be able to accommodate their needs. But I did realize that helping them draw like from picture, helping them draw portraits did help me to become a better artist, because to reiterate things and to put it in kid speak, I had to break it down for myself, and I was just like, wow, I never thought about it this way. Like flipping an image on a paper, I'm looking like, look at the negative line, look at the angle of the lines and the negative space. Follow that and make the shape. And there were so many students that made just like these awesome like profiles and portraits from just looking at a printed out image, and then other students recreated theirs as well. And so I had to work with them on that, and I'm just like, wow, because I was just dealing with this inability myself as I was doing my senior show, and I'm able to break this down for them and help them work through it, and so I can do it myself. So I just thought, wow, it's just awesome how I'm kind of working through my own problems while helping them work through it. So I feel like I become stronger as an artist and as a communicator. But yeah, we did a Steve Penley project, and he's from Carrollton, and he paints historical figures, and he is very outspoken about his position as an American, and how we need to go back to the American way and really instill like these greater values. And so I think he does that through his art, and that's why he paints these iconic figures. And well, of course he paints iconic figures because those are the ones that he admires. So like all the presidents, like movement leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King. So he paints all of these leaders, and it's just really cool. But yeah, so having the students do the portraits was really awesome, and to because I scaffolded off of that project, because I just thought it was cool that they were drawing someone they admire, and they were starting to develop a dialogue about what it is to want to be like someone and to admire someone. And so to see who they picked, and a lot of students did pick like singers just because they were pretty, and then I would have conversations with them about it. And I did have one student who put who was it who chose not Rick Ross, Roscoe, whatever. And I asked him, because we had the first, second, and third graders writing about why they chose the person and what they learned from the lesson. So I asked him, is this person of value? Have they done something great? If you were to tell Miss Amy as to why you chose this person as your idol, as your role model, would you be able to explain him in a good light? And he's just like, no. And so we really had some of the students really questioning what it was to be a role model and why they chose this person as a role model. And then as I was working with them on their writing, I'm just like, wow, this is a chance for kids to really work on things that, you know, sometimes they get skipped over in class. I do realize that some of the kids with the behavior problems are the ones that are often behind because they're sent out or they're sent away. And so they don't get a chance to really recoup after that. And they fall behind, and they become a challenge. They become such a challenge that the teacher doesn't even want to teach them anymore. And so I did have to work with a lot of students on their writing where the wonder spelling didn't even sound like the word they were saying. And it's just like, can you sound it out? And I realized they couldn't. And this was second grade. So it was just interesting. And I built a lot of relationships through that because they saw, wow, she cares enough to take the time. And I do this a lot. I jump around. I give kids at least 1 to 2 minutes of my time jumping around and making sure they are okay. Because I just do. I like to make them know that that I care, that they are important. So yeah. So I did work with them on their writing, and then help them to I did work with them on their writing and helped them to really understand why we were doing this project, which was perfect because it helped me to really build the content for my project, which was my community and me, and that was for the second and third graders. And I think it was my intent for it was for a class that, funnily and ironically enough, were not in the age group to do it. But they have improved, so it's not necessary. But I just thought it was ironic.